ओम गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुस्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Today is Sunday, so it's the Gita class. Okay, in the fourth chapter we have covered 22nd. Now go to the 23rd. Tyaktva karma phala sangam ityantena shlokena yah prarabdha karmasan yada nishkriya brahmatma darshana sampanna syat tada tasyatmanah kartru karma prayojanabhava darshinah कर्म परित्यागे प्राप्ते कुतश्चिन् निमित्ताद संभवे पूर्ववत् तस्मिन् कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तस्यापि नैव किञ्चित् करोति सः इति कर्माभाव प्रदर्शितः। गतसंगस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते। Such a jnani, we discussed, a jnani who discovers himself to be free from all karma. Okay, karma means not simply an action, which we have been discussing. It is the entire field of karma, the karta, bhokta, the subject, object, relationship, time, space, the entire state. So karmanya karmaya pashet, one who sees, is really free person. So Shankaracharya has to do lot of reconciling work. A person is active from the worldly standpoint because body is there, mind is there, sense organs are there, this world is active, and in his understanding he is free. See, this is a very strange thing. That means he is talking from two different levels. Just like a person who is sleeping, who is asleep, he has no body, physical body from his standpoint. The sleeping experience, there is no body. In fact, there is no the bed on which he is sleeping. There is no room. There is no room in which he is sleeping, isn't it? Person who is sleeping, from his experience of sleep, he has no body, he has no bed, he has no room. That means no time and place, no time, space and object and the world from his experience. But when you look at the body, you take the body into consideration. You see there is a body, there is a bed on which the body is lying, and the bed is in the room is in the world, in the city is in the world. World means time, place, sun, moon, star, people, and everything come into picture. All this is visible to the others, not to him. Or in a drama, this we have been telling anyway. In a drama, whatever he appears, the character he appears, his dialogues, his actions, his dance, all that is from the standpoint of the onlookers, the spectators. For himself, he is free from that role because the role doesn't affect him at all, because it doesn't exist for him. It is just inseparable from himself. Ornament is only a shape that is appearing to us, but from the standpoint of the gold, there is no such a thing called an ornament other than gold. The snake which we are seeing doesn't exist for the rope. So these are the two standpoints. In fact, understanding the truth means shifting our standpoint from this worldly level to your witnessing level, to your Atma level. From your own standpoint, you don't appear as an individual, and also you don't see the world. It is an individual that sees the world. You neither exist as a world, you neither exist as an individual who exists in a world. Okay? The individuality and the world both exist for each other, one another. They are mutually dependent. But when he understands himself as the pure consciousness, independent of both, neither individuality nor the world, that is his understanding. So, Gata Sangasya Muktasya, come to the shloka. See, his purpose of, the purpose of the whole teaching is both Lord Krishna as well as Shankaracharya. Both are trying to explain certain points. It is a difficult point for people to understand, yet both of them are trying to explain. And if you just pay attention, it becomes easy. Both Bhagavan Krishna as well as Shankaracharya. First, there is a life of action. You are an individual, there is a life of action. Life of action is necessary because we as a common man, as a lay person, we have been working. But compared to the modern work, if you go by the old traditional work, traditional days, every person lives instinctively and impulsively. Person who is driven by instinct and impulses, and also who is a selfish person, he needs to be controlled. Controlled in the sense, his life has to be regulated. Life has to be purified. Otherwise, the inner urges make him an animal. And he will be doing lot of all adharmic work alone. So for a lay person, his instinctive animal instinct in a human being has to be sublimated. Okay, animal instinct in a person. The thinking is also very crude thinking. Emotions are also very too negative and narrow emotions. Narrow emotions, narrow thinking, and also uncontrolled sense organs. So these have to be purified for a common person. Therefore, certain values are given. His emotions have to be purified. Certain values of certain discipline, certain interactions, all these things are given. So all these things put together, we call them karma. Okay? In worldly parlance, a person who lives with the world, with the society, he should be governed by some karma. Karma means we say Shastrokta karma. Shastra, nowadays we call them some social conventions, government laws and Shastra. We take all these three into one set. Government laws, social conventions, and also Shastrokta karma. All these put together, they help us to purify our mind. Otherwise, if a person is left to himself, it is difficult to understand for the modern people. Modern people, particularly the West, they say just to do whatever you like. Okay. No rules, no dharma, no discipline, no values. Youngsters are supposed to live the way they like. Eat whatever they eat, enjoy whatever they do, jump, dance, sing and do anything. That means there are certain instinctive, impulsive urges in a person. They prompt us, they drive us, go by those drives. Never control those drives. This is what seems to be modern culture, which is influencing India too. And it is all over the world also, it is the same. People just live. Because it is like animals. Animals feel like drinking, they drink, feel like eating, they eat, and just that's all. That's enough. And nothing more. The refinement in a person, the purification, all that they say, it is against freedom. So the freedom is such a word. Oh, is gone to another extreme. True, we understand there is some kind of a subjugation. There is an over-suppression. Over-subjugation was there on one side. Once there is a subjugation, then is another overreaction against it, and people want freedom. Now in the name of freedom, there is again a double standard. Some people want freedom, and his freedom means subjugating others. All this is a complication, so we leave them. So here we only say this much, because we know in the world it is all complex things. So for a common man, responsibilities, certain duties and responsibilities for your individual, certain good habits you are supposed to cultivate. Respect your parents and live in a family responsibly. Take care of the people, love them, care for them. So being a good, healthy member of a family, then be a good and healthy, responsible member of a society, of a community, wherever you are working. All this we call dharma. Okay? So dharma means the society or the government or the shastra enjoins certain duties. So dharmas means a larger interest of the society, in short. A larger interest of a society or a larger interest of the cosmos. If you leave it to an individual, he always goes by his own personal interest. The personal selfish interest, he works against the rest of the society in the interest of his person alone. Now what dharma does is, too much of personal interest at the cost of the world is wrong, because the world is not separate from you. This you have to keep in view as ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is the world which you are thinking, looking at, the people are not separate from you. Your inner self, your real nature of the Atma is one with the whole universe. Your inner nature of the Atma is one with the whole society, all living beings, all non-living living. Your inner soul or inner Atma, your real nature of Atma is one with the totality. If this is the ultimate truth, then the Dharma Shastra also springs from this ultimate truth in a tentative level, in a limited level. So if you hurt others, exploit others, disobey others, other means a larger interest of the society, you are working against the rest of the society, too self-centered. That person, what is wrong if he remains self-centered? What is wrong if he becomes too petty and worldly minded and only pleasures and then money and then pleasures and only in that much, not having any higher values? That's why they say freedom, because the values restrict our freedom. The discipline, values, okay, the religion, all this restrict their freedom. Nowadays people complain. The very idea of freedom is misunderstood. The purpose of freedom is to grow inwardly spiritually. To follow dharma, you need freedom. To grow spiritually, to learn values, to practice values, to broaden your heart, to purify and so that you inwardly grow from this jiva state and grow into Paramatma Swarupa. To grow, to learn, to evolve and to discover your real nature. You need freedom for growth, for understanding, for evolving. You can't say freedom because I just feel like doing and I do it. Even if it is harmful to me, I have a freedom. I must do as I like it. Now, if you have a freedom to destroy yourself, commit suicide, and then that is not a freedom. That is a destruction. Okay? Freedom doesn't mean, nowadays people say, freedom is not a freedom if it can't be abused. Freedom is not a freedom if you can't destroy, if you can't kill others, if you can't abuse it. Freedom is a freedom only for abusing. It is meant for abusing. If you abuse, then is a freedom. If you don't abuse, it is not a freedom. This is the way the modern youngsters are talking. Freedom means do as you like it. You destroy everybody, that is freedom. If you don't destroy, then it is no more a freedom. So, the obedience to law, obedience to government, obedience to Shastra, an obedience is a positive value. Okay? Positive value, you see, if you sincerely, wholeheartedly follow and obey, a new value, a quality, a good quality, a healthy quality in you develops. Okay, Therefore, at one stage of dharma, you are supposed to be governed, your life is supposed to be governed by karma and dharma. Karma and dharma. Your life is supposed to be governed by karma and dharma. And a later stage, you transcend all this karma dharma. The absolute truth, a person who understands absolute truth, he transcends the karma dharma. Transcending karma dharma is a point to be understood here. That is an important thing. See, transcending means person doesn't go by a written law. See here this thing. A written law, a scheduled law, a written law, a constitution, social convention, or a religious law. All these things are written laws, a codified laws. But there is another law. That is your inner self, which is the purified. A jnani, an enlightened man, he discovers himself beyond the individuality. When he discovers that he is no more an individual, it is an individual. See here the two levels we say. One is an individual and the law. Law or the dharma or the social law, and in short dharma. As an individual, I tend to become too selfish and I ignore the cosmic interest and social interest. There I have to be governed by dharma. Dharma regulates it, helps me to control me, purify me, so that I will conform to the dharma, I'll obey the dharma. That way I'll reduce my selfishness, I become little more broad-minded person. Okay. So I obey the dharma, that is the cosmic law and the social law, and I live it. This is one stage. But another stage is you transcend the very individuality. Once you transcend the individuality, now where does the dharma come into picture? The rules and discipline, social laws, worldly laws, government laws, where do they come into picture? It is it's like a person who is working in a company, in a factory. He is supposed to follow the rules and disciplines of that factory. Suppose you transcend the very individuality. Means how do you transcend? Either you give up the whole factory, or you become the very owner of the factory. You are no more a worker. Okay? You become the very owner of it. Owner means you transcend the very system. You transcend the system. A member is supposed to conform to the laws of a system. Laws of a system. When you transcend your individuality, you are no more a member of a system. That means you are totally outsider. Now the no rules apply to you, no rules are necessary. This is just a worldly example, but here I tell you, transcending means you transcend your sense of individuality. So transcending individuality doesn't mean you cease to be an individual. This is now important. In Vedanta, transcending means individuality is not your identity. Your identity changes. Your whole outlook, your way of looking, your understanding changes. Individuality looks like a simple a role in a drama, that's all. It's a tentatively assumed role. It's not a binding role. Earlier you were a real member. Now you have just resigned from the job. You are no more a part of a system. You are not bound by, you are not governed by the laws of the system. Yet you may come as a visitor. Suppose you come as a visitor, as a guest to the same company. You come as a visitor, as a very chief guest, very important, very respectable guest. You come there. Now you come there, but you are not bound by the law, yet you love and care for them and just to follow the laws for them. Okay. Now you come as a more a free person who transcended, who is outside the system. Still you come there as a guest. They care for you. You also care for their laws. You don't want to violate them. You don't want to hurt them. Okay. Similarly here, a person who transcends this cosmos, in his identity he is outside. Outside means what? He is untouched, unaffected by it. Yet he assumes the individuality and works in the world more as a sportively. Okay? More as a sportively, spontaneously, willingly he assumes it. This is where Shankara is trying to or even Bhagavan Krishna is trying to reconcile. These two levels he is trying to explain. This becomes a complicated, so I have to explain very patiently, point by point. A person who was working before as a part of a company, he feels he is bound by the laws. Why bound by the laws? Because he is an individual. Individuality by its very nature tries to be selfish, because it is the very nature of individuality tries to be selfish, because individuality itself means maintaining myself against the world. Okay, I want to maintain myself against the cosmos, against the world, against society. I have to assert my individuality against the rest of the world. So there is a compromise, there is an adjustment, yet I maintain my individuality. Here you are transcending individuality. That means you don't see the world as a separate from you. You are the individual, you are the world. Both are you. Both are you. Okay. Then an individuality is a totally different one. Individuality gets sublimated. It gets falsified. That means it is no more a real for you. It is a tentatively, superficially assumed one, like a role in a drama. Role in a drama is not real for you, is not a real person. It's just a consciously assumed for sake of a purpose, just for sake of this drama. Maybe 1 hour drama I play and then later I close it. Tentatively assume and later I just drop it. Similarly, he lives within the world as a tentative person, superficially assumed one. It doesn't bind him in his inner identity, he is free from that. The role which is playing in the drama is not his identity, because the actor's identity is something independent of the role he plays. It is just superficial. Therefore he says, karma tyaga, transcending karma, means he doesn't feel bound by the karma which he used to feel when he was ignorant person who identified himself as a jiva, as a karta bhokta, as an agent of action, as an individual. Now the individuality becomes a dummy, is a superficial play, because he gave up that identity. His consciousness of himself, from his consciousness, that individual identity is erased. In his consciousness, see, self-consciousness, that individuality is dropped, is removed. He transcends to another level where he is a witnessing consciousness, a pure consciousness without any self-opinion, self-image. That means he is a consciousness without a self-opinion, without a self-image. Self-image is individuality. He has no self-image, like as I gave you an example of a baby. Baby doesn't have a self-image. See, baby of 2 years old, he doesn't have a self-image. Baby lives, but no self-image that I am so and so person. No self-image, no self-opinion. Something like that. Example is an example. Okay, just an illustration. Don't take it literally like that. Similarly, he is an enlightened man. He is free from a self-identity. But an identity is an assumed, like in a drama. That means when he assumes a drama, in a drama assumes identity, that identity is just for sake of the drama, to show it to others, not for owning it for himself. He doesn't own it in his consciousness. He just makes a show for others, and he is free from that identity. This is important. He is free from such an identity in himself. He remains as if in deep sleep. As if in deep sleep. Because one who is in deep sleep has no waking identity. Waking identity is for sake of waking world alone. He is free from that identity. So a person who is free from it, he is not bound by his earlier role, earlier identity. That's why he says he becomes a sannyasi. Sannyasi means what? He is free from all karmas. Generally, such enlightened people are not bound by worldly laws or worldly social conventions, government laws. Therefore, they just give up and live freely. But free doesn't mean that he violates the government laws, social laws, and just lives as he likes, that goes against society. He can't do that, because the very nature of enlightenment itself means a very simple person, egoless person, a person of spontaneous compassion, spontaneous love. So for him, the law is the spontaneous love and compassion. That is his law. See, he follows he doesn't follow the external religious law, government law, or any social conventions. Yet he can't be called as an antisocial. He can't be called as a wicked person, because like a baby doesn't follow government law. You 2 years old, you tell the baby that you follow this law. Baby doesn't know the law. Baby can't even understand. Yet baby, nobody can punish the baby, because baby follows the spontaneous compassion and love, the selflessness, because the innocence, baby's innocence, there is egolessness, there is a selflessness. So the spontaneous egolessness itself is a law, it follows. The egolessness, the spontaneous love, the spontaneous compassion, that itself is a law, follows spontaneously, not as a consciously obedience, not as an obedience, it just happens spontaneously. Similarly, an enlightened person lives two ways. This is what Lord Bhagavan Krishna is trying to explain, and also Bhagavan Shankaracharya too also explaining it. He is explaining and he is commenting. Now once he transcends, should he follow the external worldly law or not? You can't make a law. He may be just a free man like a sannyasi. Sannyasi is just a free man. But free man doesn't mean he doesn't consciously follow. This is a government law, this is a religious law, this is any other social conventions. He consciously doesn't follow, but his heart, the natural compassion of that enlightened man itself, unconsciously he follows all the laws. Following law means it doesn't hurt others, doesn't exploit others. In fact, he does good to others, everybody. So his own enlightenment itself is a law, in fact, which is a better law than all other worldly laws. Rather than even more than the religious law, his own compassion, his own enlightenment follows much better, because he can never dream of hurting others. He can never think of exploiting others, hurting others, cheating others. He can never do, because he sees everybody as his own self. When you see everybody as your own self, you can never think of cheating you, hurting yourself. They are all just your own Atma. So from that understanding, he doesn't consciously follow the law. Whatever he does it becomes automatically law. In fact, it is a very highest law, a greatest human law. Even the law may not say, he goes beyond the law and is a much more a better person, because he lives so spontaneously, naturally. The law of the Atma which is in everybody, which is in everybody's heart. Therefore, he can never think of hurting, destroying nature, hurting people, killing anybody, because the spontaneous love and compassion is the law he follows. That too also not consciously is trying to follow. Generally, ordinary person, a common man has to follow the law, because if he is not conscious of the law, he tends to become selfish. He ignores others' interest and he just becomes selfish. So he has to be consciously reminded, hey, you are trying to be selfish, you are forgetting the law. Government has to remind you, religion has to remind you, society has to remind you, elderly people have to remind them. Why? Because if they don't remind, he tend to become selfish. Here, he doesn't need to be reminded because no social law, no government law, no religious law need to remind him. Therefore, we say he transcends religion. Religion means in Hinduism we call karma kanda, but in other Europe they have to say religion, because their religion means only karma kanda. So he transcends religion, he transcends karma kanda in Hindu context. Yet, but is he a religious man or not? Oh, he's much more religion. In fact, he follows the religion much better than the normal religious man. Okay? He follows religion much better than ordinary religious person. Because ordinary religious person forcibly follows. He tries to follow through letter rather than the spirit. He tries to follow through letter. I think you understand the letter and the spirit. These other people try to follow through letter. So in following mechanically, sometimes they end up hurting people, exploiting people. They say this is religion, I am supposed to follow. But this person, this enlightened man, follows from his heart. The real implication of all the laws, real implication of all dharma, religion, Because the compassion, infinite compassion, spontaneous compassion, universal compassion for all. Because he sees everybody as himself, because he transcended his individual jivahood. Then whatever he does becomes a religion. Whatever he does, whatever he thinks, whatever he acts, that is government law, that is social law. Because in his spontaneity, all laws are unconsciously taken care of. In fact, laws should be enacted seeing his life, because he is the basis of law, he is the source of law. He has become Brahman himself. He has understood the Brahman nature. Therefore, from him the laws arise. Laws are formulated based upon his life, because he can never think of hurting others, exploiting others, cheating others. He doesn't see as others. They are me and I am me. I and me, they all are one alone. Whole cosmos is one. So his very nature, that enlightened man's nature, is the basis of all law, all religion, all social convention. In fact, law has to be corrected from his heart, okay, from his experience. Based upon his experience, law has to be corrected. Religion has to be corrected. Religious books have to be corrected from the man of enlightenment. This is how Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads Vedanta says. Nayam syat veda kinkaraha. Shankaracharya says at one point, Nayam syat veda kinkaraha. This enlightened man is no more a servant of Veda. No more an obedient servant of Veda. Why? Oh my God. Because he is the heart of the Veda. He is the spirit of Veda. Veda comes from his heart, because his nature is Sakshi Swarupam. He is the consciousness witnessing. From him all Veda, all conventions, all dharma arise. He doesn't have to consciously follow, but whatever he follows, it becomes automatically dharma. He is no more an individual. That is the main thing. Okay? Just like a baby, out of innocence, out of selflessness, he loves everybody, cares everybody, he never thinks of hurting anybody. That is the real law behind all dharma, all law, all religion, all social convention. Such a person doesn't follow anything. Suppose if he is living in, such a person lives like a sannyasi. Sannyasi means what? He just transcends the worldly conventions, worldly laws, government laws, and just lives. See, during British period, just for your information, if a person takes to sannyasa, he is considered as that is considered as a civil death. No civil law applies to him. No government law applies to him. If there is any case against him in police case or a court case, no police can arrest him. That was the law. During British period, probably little earlier also. If once he becomes a sannyasi, all cases are closed down. Nobody can arrest him. Because he voluntarily disowned all rights. Not only right, see, police or government cannot arrest him, no court can try him, can punish him, because we are talking of real sannyasis, not a fake sannyasis who just wears the kashaya clothes, not that way. Who is really sannyasi, who is really in a spiritual sense a sannyasi. We are talking of such people. Not a fake person who wears the kashaya and does all illegal things. That is not a sannyasi anyway. He only changed the class. He is not a sannyasi in his mind. And he is not in his understanding. But a real sannyasi, the law exempts him. Law doesn't punish him, because from his heart he voluntarily follows the law. Not binding. He is not bound by the law, but he follows the real spirit of law. Because he doesn't have to obey the law, because he doesn't demand any rights. He doesn't demand. If society punishes him, he will not complain. If the society, somebody punishes him, somebody exploits him, beats him, he won't go and complain to the police. He won't go and complain, because when I have no rights, when I have no duties, when I have given up the government laws, following laws, that means duties. When I have given up my responsibility, I have no rights also. He voluntarily gives up all rights, property rights, social rights. He doesn't demand any rights. That's why we call him, he's a beggar. Beggar means has no rights. He only simply begs food. If the people give, out of voluntary compassion. If they give, okay. If he doesn't give, with the same, blessing in his heart, he goes away. Even if you refuse to give him, his blessing is same like before. He just with the same blessing in his heart he goes away. He never complains that why. So that such a person, neither he demands rights nor he obeys things. Then what he obeys? He obeys the inner purity of the heart, inner egolessness. He is trying to transcend his ego. He is trying to learn. If supposing as a sadhaka, as a learning student, a sadhaka means a practicant, if he commits a mistake, the Dharma Shastra tells him, Sannyasa Dharma, he himself corrects it. He understands, oh, here I have done a mistake. He himself corrects it. He compensates it. He again tries to transcend. So therefore, his heart is so pure, he understands that I have been selfish here. No, I should transcend, I should correct myself, and I should compensate to the person. So he will not consciously think of hurting anybody. Therefore, the government law doesn't arrest him, doesn't punish him. He doesn't own the property. If somebody snatches anything, whatever he has in his hand, he doesn't complain. Therefore, the society also understands that, oh, for such an enlightened sannyasi, if you hurt him, you will incur a biggest papa. Never hurt him. Never cheat him, never hurt him. No government, no police, even the wickedest asuras would not hurt such sannyasis. In Indian law, I have seen in the North India and other places, the thieves, robbers also, if they meet, they do namaskara to you. And he openly admits, Maharaj, I am a thief because I have been poor man, I have nothing else to do, what can I do? I have been thieving. And you see, please bless me. He is a thief, he says, I am a professional thief. Maharaj, I am like this. He says, I can admit in front of you, I can't admit others, but I can admit in front of you because you are directly God to me. These North Indians, they have so much of respect for sadhus. Even a thief comes and admits to you. I myself met one fellow, why not one? I met more than one thief. He openly admits, I am thief, Swamiji, he says. Because they think that this sadhu is such a person that is beyond everything. He is directly God himself. Therefore, we don't feel any jealousy or any fear. We don't have to fear, and we directly admit in front of him. So that is the sannyasa life. So it was there in British period, even now also to certain extent, but I think that law doesn't exist now. But it was there. In a way it works. Therefore, he doesn't do any social duty, family duty. He doesn't follow. He doesn't follow voting. He doesn't go for voting. He doesn't enjoy any rights. And he doesn't follow any duties. Then what is his? His is the spontaneous blessing and compassion to whole universe. All living beings. He blesses all living beings. He works. His thinking, his thoughts, his ideas, everything is for the good of all. Never thinks of hurting anybody. So that is an enlightened state. Okay? Supposing such a person, due to some reason, he has to work in the worldly situation. Work means what? He is a grihastha, supposing, or he is in an ashrama. His guru does an order that, oh, you have to do this thing. Or if he is a grihastha, parents are there, because parents means naturally, in Shastra says that parents are superior to everything. You can't disobey anybody. Out of the parents, mother is more than father. So even a sannyasi does namaskara to his mother, because mother is everything beyond. She is the first goddess and also last goddess. Nobody can ignore. Even if a sannyasi meets mother, he has to do namaskara to mother even after sannyasa. So nobody can think of hurting anybody else but even mother. If supposing mother tells that, he is an enlightened man, now don't take sannyasa, you have to be here, because this family responsibility you have to take care. You have to do something to the society, or to these things you have to be there. He just obeys them. He just obeys their order and continues the working, continues the lifestyle of working person. Inwardly he has transcended. Yet he just follows it for, now we are talking of the external situation. External life, because the parents are gurus, guru and mother, they are just, you can say, the almost equal. Mother is equal to guru. In fact, first guru. And also even after sannyasa also she continues. Guru means she may not be able to advise, she may not be able to teach you spirituality or others, but at least as a person needs to be respected. Oh, so that is the biggest respect. And even Manu says, all Shastras say, Veda says, Upanishad says, everybody says, nobody can reject it. Nobody can reject that. Therefore, in these things, in the external law, the external conventions, there, even if it transcends all of them, just for sake of the external life, if they insist that you have to do that, he accepts voluntarily, because this is also spontaneous. Like a role is given to you in a drama, he spontaneously acts, enjoys it. Even the role is a drama anyway, it's not through him. Okay, mother asked me to do, okay, I'll continue. Guruji asked me, okay, I'll play it just like a drama. It just acts like a drama. Inwardly, he is not bound because he doesn't become an individual. Individuality already transcended. He just assumed individuality just for sake of a play. He just leaves it. That's what he's talking. Even if he gata sangasya muktasya, 23rd Shli, gata sangasya muktasya, he is free from the attachment. Mukta, he is liberated from his individuality. Okay? He just to transcend the individuality. Yet, jnanavasthita chayatasaha, he abides, he stays in his jnana swarupam. Jnana means that enlightenment. He lives in that enlightenment state, enlightenment swarupa. Jnanavasthita chetasaha. 23rd shloka I am reading out. Okay, gata sangasya. He is totally detached. Detached means he is not identified with his particular place, time and identity, family. It doesn't have an identity, particular individual identity. And through that individual language, area, country, society, conventions, no religion, none of them he identifies with them. He transcends all of them. Gata sangasya, muktasya, he is totally liberated. Liberated from individuality. He discovers himself as the pure Atman. So, jnanavasthita chetasa, he stays as that sakshi, witnessing consciousness. Such a person, yet if he has to do from the worldly standpoint, he has to act, he has to live as a worldly conventional life, what will he do? Then will he do or not? Even if he does it like a drama. The drama we are calling it as a yajna here. Oh, okay? Yajna yacharatah karma samagram praviliyate. He does it just like a play, a sportive play. Sportive play means he doesn't take it his heart. He doesn't really identify with it. It just superficially appears. Inwardly he remains unaffected. It's like a baby playing. Baby doesn't identify with it. Yet for external people you see them something. Generally you see, I see here, they decorate the baby as a Krishna. When the Krishna Ashtami comes, they decorate the baby as Krishna. And the baby, sometimes it accepts it, sometimes it is not in a mood. Baby cries, she doesn't want all that, don't throw away. So, because baby doesn't understand it as a game, and because it refuses to do. Other people say, hey, keep it, you are Krishna. Baby doesn't understand whether I am Krishna or not, I don't care. Or sometimes they decorate the baby as a Devi in this Navaratra. Now Navaratras are going on. So Devi, Durga, Lalita and these things, they make up the girls. Or sometimes male boys also they make up as girl. Parents play with the children, they don't understand. Children are too innocent. Mother plays with them, everything. They make up like a Devi and then dress up and all those things. Sometimes they also innocently play like that, and sometimes if they are not in a mood, they throw away everything. So like this, they playfully act. They playfully take the worldly responsibilities and look after others. Suppose tell them to look after, okay. They do it, but even that, see, taking care of the people, serving the society, taking a job, even if they do it sincerely, seriously. But inwardly they know all this is a play. This is what here Bhagavan Krishna says, yajna. Yajna is a two level. As a sadhaka's yajna, here is a jnani's yajna he is talking. Jnani's yajna is different. A sadhaka's yajna is different. Sadhaka's yajna is, here is a God and I am a jiva, I am offering to him. it is a relational. Here a selfish jiva, a normal jiva who is trying to come out of his selfishness, so therefore he cares for Ishvara, surrender to Ishvara, offers to him, loves him, cares for him. He tries to control himself, gradually coming out of his selfishness. There it is a sadhaka's yajna. Okay, yajna for sake of what you call heaven. Yajna is a karma yoga, so yajna meaning has got many meanings according to the context. One is a sakama yajna, yajna to get the result, swarga is a result. Okay, yajna, you perform the yajna as a daily duty which gives you swarga as a result. This is sakama yajna. Nishkama yajna is karma yoga. Third, here the jnani's yajna. Jnani's yajna is a spontaneous play. Spontaneous play means his yajna is nothing but his own atma. His atma and yajna are not two. So Jnani's yajna is, in fact, he remains a non-dual atma chaitanyam. He remains the pure consciousness where there is no second thing. Whole world, all people, everybody is myself, is one non-dual truth. That non-dual truth is explained as a yajna because he lives so spontaneously from the worldly standpoint. His spontaneous living is a spontaneous living like in a drama, is explained, he is described as yajna. Okay, in this 23rd and 24th shloka. This jnani spontaneous living without any identity as an individual. He transcends all individuality and remains Brahman himself. Still he acts from the worldly standpoint, looks like an individual because there is a body. Though he is not the body, but the body is there which acts. Like a baby without a self-image, without a self-identity acts. Like that when Jnani lives and acts. That Jnani's behavior from the worldly standpoint, two ways Jnani. One is he lives unconventionally, lives like a sannyasi, beggar, just lives freely wherever he goes. Another is if you are asked to, like parents or guru, somebody advised him, hey, you need to stay here because you have to look after certain responsibilities and you can't take sannyasa, you can't be a sannyasi. He out of love, out of respect for mother and guru, because both are equal to guru as I told you. So out of mother's order, he can't disobey and continues to be there. He continues in the worldly life and worldly responsibilities, but his inner understanding changes, already changed. Now he lives also spontaneously. He obeys everything, but not as a duty, but as a spontaneous expression. You can see from the worldly standpoint, he follows duty. But in his mind, there is no bindingness. Spontaneously, he follows the duty. This nature of a jnani, from the other's standpoint, how he lives spontaneously. But at the same time, follows all duties of the social conventions, government laws, and everything he follows. He looks like ordinary man, but inwardly he is totally free. See, this is a thing, is a very subtle point. I hope I have conveyed. Yajnayacharata karma samagram praviliyate. Such a person, as if he is following the punya, following the duties, still he doesn't get any punya papa because he transcends all punya papa. In his inner understanding, he is beyond punya papa. He doesn't get any punya, any papa. He transcended everything. Only that external form he follows, that like that as a worldly man. He looks like a worldly man. That's why in India we have got, some are sannyasi jnanis. Jnanis, enlightened people, you find in two places. Some sannyasis, some enlightened people are sannyasis. Some enlightened people are worldly people also. They have a family and everything. But you can see them, even they have a family. You go and look at them, they talk to them. You feel that they are not individuals at all. The whole, their way of talking, their level of talking comes from something from a different level. Their expressions, their words, etc. You can see them, their whole vision, their way of looking is something different, totally different. They no more remain as an individual. Yet they will be working in limited conditions as if they are worldly people, but they are not. So this is, Bhagavan Krishna is calling as a yajna. He does it like a yajna. Yajna means is a jnani's yajna, not a sadhaka's yajna. Everything is spontaneous blessing to the world. Spontaneous blessing to the world. Yajnaya charatah karma. He seems to be apparently doing his duty, following his duty, social duty, family duty, government laws and religious laws, everything he seems to be following. We generally give an example of Bhagavan Krishna himself. See, Bhagavan Krishna himself, if you see his life, he followed the duty of a king. He was an advisor to Krishna, Pandavas. He was following a duty of a king. You can see he's an inward man, God himself, coming in a human form but following the human duties of a grihastha, as a householder, as a worldly man with a married wife and children and everything, family responsibility. He seems to be following externally all the responsibility, but he does them spontaneously, but follows all the duties sincerely. Such a person's karma doesn't produce, it doesn't bind him. This is told because karma for an ordinary man produces some result. Two result, as you know. One is the worldly result. When you do some karma, it produces the worldly result. Another is that religious result called merit, punyam we call. Religious merit. Punyam or demerit, papam. Papam means a negative merit. That is a negative point. If you hurt somebody, if you disobey something, laws, government laws or even religious law, you incur papa. If you follow punya. Now the jnani, although he is looking like a worldly man and acting, he doesn't incur punya papa because his actions are spontaneous like a baby. Baby's action, does it attract punishment or what you say, a reward? No reward, no punishment. Baby's actions are out of innocence and out of egolessness, therefore no good and bad. Supposing baby unconsciously takes something and then throws away somewhere, it hurts somebody, nobody punishes the baby. Because baby doesn't incur sin, doesn't get punya also. Similarly, jnani's nature is like a yajna, a spontaneous blessing to the whole universe, whole cosmos. Therefore, such a person, samagram praviliyate, all his karma, you see, samagram karma praviliyate, the 23rd shloka says, his entire karma just gets melt away. Melt away means what? It doesn't produce punya papa. If you do karma with an individuality, with identity, individual identity, that is a jivahood, then punya papa rises. Any action done with a jivahood, as a jiva, with an identification, as a conscious individual, then the punya papa, good and bad, religious merit and demerit arises. Once you transcend it, your individual identity, then you may appear to be like a worldly man, no punya papa. I hope I have conveyed here. Therefore, yajna, then what is his life that? What do you call it? It is all yajna, divine yajna. It is a God's yajna, God's leela. In Puranic language, we call it leela. Here, Mahabharata says Bhagavan Krishna, it is like a yajna. Jnani's life is a yajna. Or another way of telling, Bhagavad Gita says, is guna guneshu vartante. Prakriti is acting spontaneously, he is no more there as an individual. We call either guna guneshu vartante, or in Puranic language call it a leela. Leela means a spontaneous sport, egoless sport, a sport just taking place without any ego. Or yajna, here jnani's life is like a yajna. These are the three words, technical words, it means all the three means the same thing. So this is the way we explain. And the next shloka says, how is that jnani's yajna? Jnani's nature is, he is Brahma, all pervasive, whole world is himself. Because as a consciousness, nothing is away from him, nothing is separate from him. He is a non-dual, pure consciousness. That nature of Brahma, that nature of Atman is described as a yajna, jnani's yajna from the worldly standpoint. It is described like a yajna. Okay? In the next shloka, 24th shloka, how does the jnani do? He says, now shloka, you see, very interesting shloka. Brahmarpanam brahma havihi brahma agnau brahmana hutam brahmaivatena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. See, for any yajna, there are ingredients in a yajna. Normal yajna, let us take it. A normal yajna has got certain ingredients. One is the doer, the agent of action, the yajna karta, one who undertakes yajna. There is a fire and there is a something, an object to, like a ghee. Ghee means what you say, that clarified butter, the what you call a heated butter. Butter, when it is heated, boiled up to certain extent, it becomes ghee. Probably you know it anyway. Ghee. Ghee in Hindi they call ghritam in Sanskrit, or ajjam. Ajjam also you can say. Ajjam, let us say. In yajna we call it ajjam, or a ghee in Hindi. Ghee is Hindi word, not Sanskrit. Sanskrit is ajjam or ghritam. Ghee is Hindi word, but English is popular in North India, therefore they adopted this Hindi word into English only. Okay, it is ajjam we call it. So the ajjam or certain other materials you offer into the fire. You require a yajna karta. There is an yajna is a fire. And then you require ajjam to offer into it. Offering is an action, and the result it produces. So these are the ingredients. The doer of yajna, the fire, number 2, the material you offer into the fire, third one. Fourth one is the very offering action, the act of offering. Fourth is the result it produces. So okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sorry, 5 ingredients. 5 ingredients constitute yajna. This is a common normal yajna. But in Jnani's nature, when he becomes enlightened, all yajna, all these 5 ingredients is himself. See, beautiful explained. He is the karta. He is the doer of yajna. He is the yajna fire. He himself is the yajna fire. He himself is the material which is offered. Third one also himself. Fourth, the act of offering is himself. The result is himself. So Jnani himself is all the 5. Hey, how is that? That means he doesn't see separation from others. He is all pervasive. He sees himself appearing as all these 5. Therefore, Brahmarpanam, his offering is Brahma. Brahma Havihi, the material he offers into fire is himself, Brahma. The fire is Brahma, Brahmagnav, Brahmanahutam, okay? And the act of offering is Brahma. And Brahmaivatena Gantavyam. And the result, what he get it, the result, the punyam he gets is also himself. Brahma Karma Samadhi. This whole is a Brahma Karma Samadhi. Samadhi means a jnanam. So it is a Brahma Karma, he does it. Brahma Karma means what? Staying as a Brahman, discovering himself as a Brahman is his yajna. Jnani's yajna is not a performance, not an action. He discovers himself as a Brahman, staying as a Brahman. He stays as a Brahman is described as an yajna from the outsider's standpoint. Because he drops his individuality, transcends his individuality, time, space and the world, stays as a Brahman. That Brahmatva Swarupam, nature, is described as a yajna. How? All the ingredients of yajna, the act of yajna, the material offered, the fire and the doer and the result, all is himself. All the 5 is himself. So that is a peculiar yajna. That means it is not an ordinary yajna. The very Jnani's nature, the enlightened man's nature himself is described as a yajna, is a figuratively, more as a metaphorically described as a yajna. In fact, he remains as a Brahman. Okay? Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagnav, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaivatena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Okay? Now coming to the 25th next shloka, I'll just say one word I say and conclude it. Now he says, Bhagavan Krishna, there are other yajnas he is discussing. A sadhaka is supposed to follow various yajnas. He describes there are various yajnas possible for sadhakas to purify their mind and culminate into that Jnani's nature. So as a sadhaka stage, there are various yajnas he gives them for sake of our sadhakas. All these yajnas constitute karma yoga and sadhanas. Very beautiful. We'll describe and how to follow and how to live. Each yajna we'll describe from the next class onwards. Okay? These are the sadhakas yajna. So far we have discovered Jnani's yajna. Okay? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.